Nothing can put you in the mood for a scary story quite so much as a cold day in late fall. The bite and chill in the air, the only indication that soon the snows of winter will bury the world beneath their icy weight. And what strangeness stirs down beneath in the cold, dead earth? Welcome to episode 1 of Not Now, Not Here. This week's episode takes place in winter and features a lonely young boy who tries to find friendship, but instead finds something much colder. It's a something that leaves you wondering, just what are monsters? Where do the monsters wait? And what will the monsters do when they are found? It is only in the cold emptiness of winter that we can begin to understand that perhaps monsters are not found. Perhaps they are made, and perhaps they can only be seen by those who have the right eyes for it. So turn down the lights, close your windows and doors, and sit back. Prepare to step forward into a world that is not now, not here. Eyes. It was winter when Charles Ward began seeing monsters. He was living with his grandmother, sharing a house as large as it was dark and as aged as it was creaky. But that's not where the monsters found him. The monsters found him in the vacant lot next door. People in town called the vacant lot 13th Street, even though it wasn't technically a street at all. It was simply a grassy patch where the town would have put a 13th Street if it ever got around to building one. So far, though, the town was content with skipping straight from 12th Street to 14th Street. It was anybody's guess whether this was because the number itself was unlucky, or, as was often hypothesized at the local diner, because nobody wanted to drive by the Ward house that badly. Whatever the cause, 13th Street was vacant. In the summer, boys who were brave enough to be in close proximity to the Ward house used the lot as a baseball diamond. In cold weather, when the snowstorms would dump their wintry load on the streets, road crews would push the snow off the paved streets into the space, making a mountain of snow that during particularly bad storms was as tall as 2 stacked elephants. The snow, not feeling one way or another about the Ward house being supposedly haunted, stayed in that spot until late spring. That winter, after the first big storm, Charles Ward discovered the snow pile on 13th Street was perfect for building a fort. Bundled by his grandmother into a sweater, jacket, gloves, snow pants, snow boots, beanie, and muffler, Charles made his way out to the snow pile day after day and dug his way into the heart of the snow mountain. At first, he carved a simple tunnel. Then, as he pushed more and more snow out, he realized he was carving a cavern. He dug shelves into the walls. He made a snow chair, a snow bed, and a snow table. The ceiling wasn't tall enough for him to stand upright without crouching, but after a week, he had built himself a perfectly acceptable little abode where he could spend his lazy afternoons. The day the monsters found him, Charles was on top of the snow pile investigating the possibility of making himself a small chimney to let out the smoke from the candle he used for light. From the street adjacent to the lot, Charles heard voices approaching. 3 older boys from school were coming around the corner. Charles ducked down and hid behind the snow pile, recognizing one of the voices as Derek's. Derek wasn't a bully, Charles thought. He was a bull, and the red cape he consistently attacked was what he called new blood. Charles had come to live with his grandmother that fall and had started at his new elementary school in the middle of the semester. On his first day, at recess, Derek had knocked him off the monkey bars. "Have a nice fall, new blood?" he asked, snickering at his own sarcasm. Since then, Derek had made a point of charging at Charles at every opportunity. As if it hadn't been hard enough for Charles to make friends, Derek, the biggest boy in school, sought to ensure that nobody would associate with Charles for fear of also becoming a target. What was he doing all the way over here, Charles wondered. Charles had taken solace in the fact that Derek lived on the other side of town. When he saw the three boys were towing plastic sleds behind them, Charles knew they were making their way to Mulberry Hill, the town's best sledding spot. If he kept his head down, they would pass right by him. Charles ducked low, prepared to do just that, but a sudden eruption of shouts and laughter made him peek out. The three boys had stopped walking and were having a snowball fight in the street. The sight of the boys smiling and playing made Charles think back to last year. His parents had still been with him, and he had gone to his old school with all his old friends. How long had it been since he'd laughed and played like that, since he'd smiled a carefree smile and talked and joked with someone his own age? Thinking about it hurt. Instead, Charles started moving. His hands groped in the snow, grasping desperate handfuls of powder, forming them into balls. When he had made a dozen or so, Charles stood upright and began pelting Derek and his friends. The other boys, seeing Charles atop the snow pile, couldn't tell if he was laughing or shouting. In truth, Charles didn't know either. "New blood," Derek shouted, recognizing his target. "You're gonna get it." The three boys rushed the snow pile. Charles abandoned his snowballs and ran down the backside, diving headfirst into the narrow fort entrance. From inside, he could hear the confused shouts of the other boys. They hadn't seen where he'd gone, and the entrance wasn't easily spotted. It was only a matter of time, though, and Charles used what time he had to make another stockpile of snowballs. He was grinning madly as he worked. When he saw a face appear in the entrance, he pelted a snowball at it. "He's in here!" one of them shouted. "He's in a fort!" Another face appeared. Another snowball shooted away. "New blood!" Derek shouted. "If you come out here, we'll take it easy on you." Charles didn't move. His arm was cocked back, waiting to hurl another snowball out the entrance. "Last warning, new blood." There was a pause. 1, 2, 3. The walls of the fort started thumping, shaking off loose flakes of snow. "They're throwing rocks," Charles thought. But there was nowhere they could have gotten rocks that large. Besides, the thumping was too rapid and persistent to be rocks. "They're jumping on the snow pile," Charles thought. Suddenly, there came a great whoosh and a rush of air. The walls and ceiling of his cavern collapsed and fell. He had no time to move, no time to get out. His fort crashed down around him like the mouth of a giant swallowing him, and Charles was buried in cold darkness. There are few times in a person's life when he is likely to experience pure, absolute blackness. Outside, there are always sources of light, the moon, the stars, a street lamp, that permeate the dark, making it dark, but not absolutely dark. But snow, when piled thick and packed tight, allows no light to pass through. As a result, Charles couldn't tell if his eyes were open or shut. More troublingly, He couldn't tell how much time was passing. He couldn't rely on his senses. Without sight or touch or sound, a second might really be an hour, and an hour could become a year. The only things Charles felt were pressure and cold, which remained hopelessly constant. The collapse had pressed Charles's face down into the snow. He had rolled onto his stomach as the snow packed around him, and for a panicked moment, he thought he would suffocate. Fortunately, one of his hands was near his face. Using the tips of his fingers and his hot breath, he managed to carve out a little space in front of his nose, mouth, and eyes. His breath, in rapid gasps, fought against the pressure of the snow on his back and chest. He calmed down after an indeterminable amount of time and found there was nothing to do but wait. Surely they won't leave me, Charles thought. They wouldn't. As much as Derek didn't like him, as much as he and his friends might want to bully him and make him suffer, they didn't want him to die. Did they? Charles blinked, or thought he blinked. There was no way to tell if his eyelids were moving other than the swipe of their opening and closing. He tried to move his arms and legs too, but it was no use. He managed to move his gloved fingers ever so slightly, but that was it. He felt tears welling up in his eyes. Soon he was crying. He stopped when he saw a light. A distant light, a pinprick in the center of his vision, like a solitary star in an endless night sky. But it grew, the light. A circle formed around it. Charles could see it moving toward him. It was a little man. Well, it was something who had arms and legs and walked upright as a man did. As it got closer, Charles decided it looked like what you would get if you crossed a man with a porcupine and then shrank it to the size of a doll. A tunnel appeared in the snow in front of Charles's face, oval-shaped and stretching into the distance. If his hot breath could have stretched to infinity and melted a hole straight through the earth, the tunnel was what it would have looked like. Charles, however, knew that no such thing was possible. He suspected he was dreaming. The little man and the tunnel were hallucinations, strange ones. The little man carried a match as a torch in one of his tiny, prickly hands. His face was distinctly rat-like, and he wore no clothes, unless you counted the quills poking out of every bare spot on him, save his face. He walked quickly, but not hurriedly, businesslike. He was generally brown and not terribly mean-looking. "Howdy," the little man said, waving his free hand. Because of the little man's size, walking through the tunnel would have been for him like walking into a long cave and finding a huge face at the end of it. But the little man didn't seem confused by this. He was, if anything, jovial. Hello," Charles said. It was difficult to talk with the snow pressing against his chest. "You're Charles." The little man's voice was tiny and high-pitched, exactly the way a porcupine would sound if a porcupine spoke. "Yes?" "My name is Dig," he said. "I'm here to help." "Oh, good. What a strange dream," Charles thought. Charles didn't know how such a little man could help him. It would take days to dig him out, even longer if he was just a part of Charles's imagination. Charles blinked several times. The creature didn't go anywhere. "I'm going to fix your eyes," Dig said. Dig plucked one of the quills from his shoulder and held it in the flame of his match. "You're going to what?" "Fix your eyes," Dig said. He was calm, his attention focused on the quill and the flame. Charles blinked. "There's nothing wrong with my eyes." Why, sure there is. I can see just fine. Can you? Charles could see that the quill was long, thin, and silverish brown in color. It reminded Charles of a syringe needle. Held in the flame, it was glowing red in no time. What's that for? Charles asked. Fixing your eyes, yeah? I don't need my eyes fixed. You're not seeing right, right? No, Charles said. I mean, yes, my eyes are fine. You didn't see those boys for what they are. What? It was hard to tell, but Dig's face seemed to show concern. You thought those boys looked like friends. You saw those boys, and you wanted to play with them. But they weren't friends, were they? You didn't see that. It's like when you go to the eye doctor and look at the big letter chart. You're supposed to see an E, but you see an F. You looked at those boys, and you saw something that wasn't actually there. I'll fix your eyes, and that won't be a problem anymore. You'll see things the way they are. Fix them how? A simple procedure. Dig held up the glowing needle like a knight giving a salute. No, thanks. I'm afraid there's no room for argument. You can't keep going on seeing things all wrong, can you? For your own good, I'm going to have to do this. Dig took a step closer. Charles screamed and wiggled his fingers. He clamped his eyelids shut and tried to twist his head this way and that. Hey now, Dig said. Stay still. No, what are you going to do with that? It's like flipping a switch, really. A tiny little poke, the smallest of jabs, and bam, you're ready to go. No. Really, it is. I don't want that. Tears were streaming now. Aw, Dig said. Knock that off. Please, Charles said. Please don't. Dig lowered the needle. You're scared? Of course I'm scared. You're going to blind me. Dig stuck the quill into the snow. It extinguished with a soft hiss. He stuck his torch into the wall of the tunnel as well. You're not seeing this right either, Dig said. He hunkered down in front of Charles like a tiny gym coach, sharp elbows on spiny knees. I'll try to make you understand. Listen here. What if you had another sense, right? But you didn't know it. Like another kind of hearing. No, wait. You're deaf. Imagine you're deaf. If a doctor came to you and said, I can give you hearing, but I'll have to poke you in the ear with this needle, you wouldn't say no to that, would you? You would want to hear. But you're not a doctor. You're a porcupine. Dig stood up and huffed. What a thing to say. It's true. Well, my boy, I'm afraid you're mistaken. In a sense, I am a doctor. I am knowledgeable in areas that would astound a human. I've taken an oath, and I've been sent to help you, to make you better. And, like it or not, I'm going to do just that. Dig retrieved his quill and his torch. He quietly started heating the quill one more time. Please, stop! I'm afraid you can't talk me out of this. You don't understand, Charles said. You're going to blind me. I'm trapped under a snow pile and I must be dreaming. You're not dreaming. I must be. Dig looked at him. Go right on believing that if you want, but it won't make this any easier. Charles did, really, try to believe he was dreaming. But dream or not, when Dig started coming closer with the glowing needle, Charles began to squirm and yell.
I'll squash you.
With what? Your nose? Charles squeezed his eyes shut again.
I won't open them. You can't do it if I don't open up my eyes.
That won't stop me. It'll just take longer and hurt more.
Stop. Stop!
You'll thank me in the end. Charles chanced one more look. He shouldn't have. The image of a red-hot needle poised to sink into his left eye would haunt him for years, as would the sound, the faint pop, the sizzle and hiss of the red needle encountering liquid. Nobody else heard the pop, or the sizzle, or the hiss. Nobody heard his screaming either, lost beneath the snow and the pale, wintry sky. When Charles's grandmother finally found Charles in the collapsed fort and saw the red mess where its face has been, she called for help. 2 EMTs dug their way down to free him. He wasn't down that far, they said to each other. He should have been able to get out on his own. At the sight of his face, one of them ran for the stretcher, while the other watched Charles cry and moan and bleed in the snow. Derek and the other 2 boys had vanished when the snow fort's roof collapsed. Moaning about a tunnel in the snow, Charles couldn't make his grandmother understand about a tiny porcupine man named Dig. Doctors at the hospital told Charles he was actually lucky. You must have been down there with some kind of animal that may have been using the snow pile as a winter home, they said. When the snow was disturbed, the animal woke up and attacked. The air pocket in its den saved you from suffocation, but it's a wonder you weren't completely blinded. He was in the hospital for a week and had to wear bandages over his eyes for 3. But his eyes would heal, doctors said, and Charles would be able to see again. You'll be scarred, of course, they cautioned. It was only a few days after the bandages came off that Charles realized something had changed. He was, in fact, seeing the world differently. He saw monsters. He saw monsters everywhere. That brings us to the end of this week's episode. We hope you found it as exciting to hear as we found it to make. Be sure to tune in next week for another chilling installment. This week's episode features music by Kevin MacLeod. The songs Ice Dragon and On the Shore are used under the Creative Commons license and can be found at incompetech.com. If you have a project and you need scoring, or if you just want to hear some cool music, I strongly recommend that you check out Kevin's site. You can also check out notnownothere.com for more information about the music, including legal information and links to all of the songs you've just heard. Other music was provided by jewelbeats.com, which is another great source for background music and scores. This podcast is written and performed by Phillip Kohtz. If you like any of the stories that you hear on the show, you can read them or download them for free online. You can find all of the stories published in a variety of digital formats, corresponding artwork, poetry, our blog, and also news about future releases at notnownothere.com. You can also find us on Twitter and probably other places. We don't know, we're new at this. If you like what we're doing, please spread the word and be sure to stop by our site and give us your feedback. We'd love to hear your thoughts, opinions, criticisms, and ideas. Until next week, kind listeners, It's time to return to the now and the here. May the winds be ever at your back.